Good morning. So it's happening. I'm outside of Starbucks. I'm on my way to Glastonbury. I'm very excited. And today is the first day of a brand new adventure called The Sacred Traveller. Okay, and basically what is happening today is we are going to Glastonbury and we are going to go and visit the Glastonbury Tor. So we have obviously a mass amount of stuff to see in Glastonbury, but my first focus for this program is going to be Glastonbury Tor, and then we will go and look at the Abbey, at the wells, etc, etc. Those will be other episodes. So this is basically me just checking in to say I'm very excited to be starting this new series. It's going to be so much fun. I've got so much stuff to share with you, so many things to tell, and I'm really going to be focusing in these episodes on giving you the history, the myths, and what I've picked up at these sites. And I'm so freaking excited to start this and share this information with you. And so yeah, let's start our travels. Can't wait. Right, so this is the bottom of the Tor, and from here it's a really steep climb up to the top. I think you might be able to see it just between the trees up there. You can have a look at the beautiful sheep. It's also a National Trust site, and the sheep is here permanently. They basically keep the grass short for all of the people visiting. Okay, so it's about 500 foot height, so we're going to be making the trek up there. Okay. Also here, right as the sun's coming up today, it's a little bit overcast, but still very beautiful. Say good morning to the sheep. Oh, gotta love it. Right, so along the pathway to the top there's many random stones that's been left on the side of the mound, and there has been questions about what pagan rites ceremonies they were performing here before it was taken over by the Christian religion. And so they do have a suspicion that it might have been some kind of moon observatory at the top of the hill. So you'll see as you walk up the stairs here a multitude of different stones basically lying around. So one of the things that the mound is really famous for is the labyrinth that has been placed around the mound. So if you can look here, you'll see that there's a little pathway that goes into the grass, and then when you just go a little bit up from it, there's a second pathway that's happening. So I'm going to include a photo here of what it looks like from the top. I don't know if you can also see there's some bunny rabbits running around here. So basically what is happening is that this is a 7-layer labyrinth, and it was used by the Druids, but the belief is that it was here way before the Druids actually came around. So this labyrinth is really one of the most elaborate structures here in Britain, and it was walked by the Druids for their rites, their ceremonies, and many people still do this as a rite of passage. They walk the labyrinth. So you have around the entire mound, which is 500 foot up, these pathways that go. I've done parts of it. It is not easy and I have friends who've basically done it as well, and it was quite painful, but it is all about, labyrinth is about death and rebirth. So basically walking into the labyrinth and then walking out of the labyrinth again symbolizes going to yourself getting rebirthed and then walking out again. Okay, so these are very cool. So if you do ever come here, just take a little stroll on the pathways that goes around, and then you'll be able to check it out. It is super cool.
Right, so we're halfway up the Tor now. You can hear how out of breath I am, so I just want to show you a little bit of the view from here, and just to explain. So this mount is really unseasonably high for this area. I mean, there are Mendip Mountain, or the Mendip Hills as they call it, is around here. So we basically have, and you can just have a looky down when you see the houses, the size of the houses. I'll give you a very good idea about how high. So that's Glasgow there. We are above the ground. Okay, so you might also notice some really high hills. And these are the points that the straight track peeps, the guys who created the concept of the ley lines, they used all of that to create the straight lines that the leys are connected to. Okay, so about 8000 BC, that's when the water levels was really high here. So if you look at how low it is down there, so this was all water, and because of the ice age and the melting and all the good stuff that happened, all of this was water. So this was literally like a little point that was sticking out, and they were the I called them the villagers. They were the water villages that were set up around, and then people had these beautiful tracks that they would use to connect the mounds to each other. So I'll show you here a picture of the sweet tracks. That's what it's called. And when they dated the wood, it went down to about 3800 BC. I've got some more sheepy friends here. So people have been coming to this mound for ages, and this mound was used, they call it the Island of the Dead. So they would bring their people here in ceremony, and they would actually bury them here within the mound. And this was a very sacred spot. So heavy like ancestral energies here. You can feel how old it is here. You can also see the sun's busy coming up at the back there. And just to show you this little hill that's here is Chalice Hill, and behind you'll be able to see to the right the really high tower is St John's, which is in the centre of town. And then just a little bit to the left of the Chalice Hill you can actually see the duck pond, which is down in the Abbey. And at the duck pond you have the Mary dragon line going through the duck pond, and then the Michael dragon line also goes through the Abbey. So when I shoot those, I'll show you exactly where those lie. So very cool here. And you can actually see Bristol Channel. If you really squint there, you see the high mound. So the sea came up all the way here. That's when we're speaking now like 4,500 BC, right? The sea came like all the way up here. So these lands were like proper lake village, like boggy, marshy lands. And I mean, the Romans had a lot to do with draining the land, and that's why we have so much land that's used for farming and all of that around here, because it was all drained. But when you do visit in winter, you will see that there's a lot of water lying around on the Somerset levels here. So it's very cool. Okay, so you can see the height of the tower with the people around it. So one of the things that's always fascinated me is that the towers are said to be used as the point where the most of the energies come together, right? So they literally, the height of the tower, it's like the most powerful point in a building, especially when it's a sacred site. And so on this building, I find it very interesting because as you walk up, and I'll show you now the picture of St Michael, and he is busy taking the scales of the dragon, and then the next picture next to his is St Bridgid busy milking the cow. St Bridgid, the beautiful pagan goddess, indicating the start of Imbolc and showing that the fertility of the land is happening and the seasons are changing. So again, the pagan and the Christian right next to each other in buildings. Okay, so it's really windy here today, but we're going to try and keep this upright. So I just want to speak a little bit about the history of the site as well, and just give you guys some insight as to what happened before the church was set up. So the Druids had been here in this land, they think about since 200 BC, and they also believe that Jesus came to actually visit Avalon as well. So his uncle Joseph of Arimathea was a tin trader, and so they would obviously travel from where they lived along the sea all the way to Cornwall, and then they would be trading for tin reserves to take back. Now after he died, Joseph of Arimathea came to England, to Britain, in 63 AD, and he arrived with 12 holy men here, and they settled here in this area. They were given land, they called it 12 hides of land, so it's a massive amount of acres, and they basically settled in this area. And so he set up the very first church. So down in the town where the abbey is where he built the first wattle Christian church. Okay, so this church was down there for ages. And also when he settled here in this land, he planted his staff on one of the hills that's inside of the Glastonbury town. And this holy thorn tree has literally been there since 63 AD when he landed. They've also taken some cuttings of the tree. It's down by the abbey, so if you ever visit the abbey you can actually see this tree. So this tree's babies are like literally all over, and I know that they give some of the cuttings to the monarchy like every year, because it only blooms like twice a year. I think it blooms like at Christmas and Easter, something like that, and so they give these cuttings to the monarchy as well. So he then died, Joseph of Arimathea died in 82 AD, and he was also buried here on the land. And then in around 179 AD, there were these two dudes, Pagan and Deruvian, from Rome. And so King Lucius, who was the king at that time, asked them to come and create a hermit settlement here on top of the Tor. And so they basically settled here, brought the like more Christian dim here, and then King Lucius actually turned out to be the first Christian king of Britain. Okay, and so people lived here on the Tor for ages. They had like the cells, the hermit settlements, all of that was right here on top of the Tor, way before the church was built in the 1200s. Okay, so there's a really cool story about St Collen. Okay, so in about 650 AD, St Collen wrote a manuscript called The Life of St Collen. So he was a Welsh saint that lived on top of the Tor here. He was living on a cell on the Tor. And then apparently two emissaries of the fairy king came to visit him. So the king was named Gwyn ap Nudd, and the king wanted to speak to St Collen. And St Collen kept on refusing, and I think the emissaries came like 3 times, and by the 3rd time he said fine, he'll come with. So what he did was he took some holy water with him and then went underground. So they believed that the fairy king lived underneath the Tor here, and when he went in to go and see the fairy king, he actually took the holy water and threw it all over the king and the palace and everything. And what happened then was that the fairies disappeared from this land. So the holy water made the fairies disappear. And the castle disappeared, and so the fairies basically left Glastonbury. Now if you do come and visit the Tor, you'll see that there is a section, if you're coming from town to your right hand side, that is called the Fairy Forest. And so I do believe that they probably still here. They've probably just gone a little bit deeper underground as well. The first church that was then put up here on this holy mound was in the 12th, 13th century, and it was called the St Michael's Church. Okay, so you will notice that, and we're going to speak a little bit more about the ley line shortly, but a lot of the churches that is on the St Michael ley line that runs through the south of England was basically built on holy sites that is connected with the energy of the dragons or the dragon lines, the telluric energy of the earth. And so by the Christians, St Michael was seen as the slayer of the dragons. And so whenever they placed a holy site on there, they would name it St Michael's, because it meant that it tamed the earth energies there, and it was basically contained at that point in time. So it would have also stopped people from having pagan ceremonies there, because basically the earth energies were slayed by St Michael. So then, lucky for us, in 1275 an earthquake basically destroyed the entire church. Everything fell down, right down to the ground. So all that remains today is basically the St Michael's Tor that you see behind me, and that is the only thing that has remained and stood the test of time. So in 1539, King Henry VIII was on a bit of a mission to raid a lot of the abbeys across the country. They had great wealth and accumulated great wealth, and he was obviously also changing the religions, going through his whole thing of having now wanting to get divorced and needing money for certain wars that he wanted to fight, etc. So in 1539 they basically ransacked the whole of the abbey. So we'll go into a bit more detail about exactly what happened there, but the reason why the Tor is significant in that is that the abbot of the time was actually hung on top of the Tor by the men of King Henry VIII, and basically signifying the end of the abbey and the existence of the abbey. So this beautiful land carries a lot of very, very intense history. So okay. They also believe that there are tunnels that run from the Tor all the way down to the abbey. And so there's a story about 30 monks who apparently got into this tunnel to the abbey, and of the 30 monks, only 3 actually left the tunnel. So one of them was struck dumb, and 2 was completely insane by the time they got out of the tunnel. So there's a lot of legends about what goes on underneath the ground here in Glastonbury. Now there's various King Arthur legends that's connected to Avalon as well. And we also know about Morgan Le Fay. She was the queen of the fairies, and she lived here on the Isle of Avalon. And so there was a book written by a monk of Llancarvan called Caradoc, and it was called The Life of Gildas. And he wrote in this book about Queen Guinevere that was kidnapped by Malvis. He was the king of what they then called Summerland, and Arthur then came to come and rescue her. So she was kept up here on the Tor, and he couldn't get to her because of all the water that was obviously around the land here. So he had to sign a treaty with King Malvis, and they believe that King Malvis even had a fort up here as well, and he then eventually got his beloved Guinevere back. Now the other thing that also happened was that the monks, they were all living down in the abbey, which is down at the bottom here of the Tor, and they had in about 1191 excavated some of the land and told people that they had found the burial place of King Arthur and of Guinevere. So this obviously made all the pilgrims flock to the lands here, and it is believed, if you visit the abbey, and we'll go through there when I do make my video on the abbey, that there was a grave, there's a stone there for King Arthur and for Guinevere. And the other thing is also that King Arthur was brought here to Avalon after the battle, his very last battle, where he was really injured badly, and they believe that he was brought to Avalon and that he also passed away here on the Isle of Avalon. So with Morgan Le Fay, the Lady of the Lake. give you an idea of how massively high this tower is. And this is basically all that remains. So as I mentioned before, these are generally like real power spots. You can hear how windy it is here. So this is really important. This is a map showing you the actual ley line. So you can see here, showing towards Avebury. So if we look that way, there you go. Ley line running straight through here, beautifully shown as Dragon Path, all the way through. And then that goes to St Michael's Mount in Cornwall. And then there, right through the tower. Okay, also showing you the north, east, south. So what I find very interesting is this isn't due north or due south. This Dragon Path just runs as it runs. There's no actual north-south alignment. Okay, so the ley lines. So it's an interesting thing here. So we have the Michael ley line. So Michael ley line runs all the way from Hopton, which is on the east coast of the UK, all the way through the south of the UK, and then it goes down to St Michael's Mount. So on this line there's 16 points on the line, right? So there's a church in Hopton, and then St Michael's Mount is where it ends. So in between there's these varying different power spots that's located on this line. So in the early 1900s, Alfred Watkins basically was out on his horse and then had a bit of an epiphany one day where he went, oh my goodness, guess what? I can see that these like mounds and these holy places are connected by a straight line. And then they started doing the investigation, and lo and behold, they found a whole bunch of churches and things, all of them named St Michael's. So they basically made the connection and realized that these sites were all connected by a straight line. So these straight lines are what we call ley lines or consciousness lines. Okay, so they are literally the pathways between the sacred energy spots in the ground, right? Like, so they will a lot of them will have water underneath them, or it will be a point where the earth energies or the dragon lines actually cross. Okay, so if you can imagine, you have the straight consciousness line, and then what you have is you have two other lines of energy that's a bit like a caduceus, you know, the little staff with the snakes that run around it. These two lines run like over next to this main line. Okay, so these lines are called the Mary Earth energy current, and then the Michael Earth energy current. So Mary is obviously signifying the feminine energy, the yin energy, and then Michael is signifying the masculine energy and the yang energy. Okay, so you have these running next to this line, and here in Glastonbury it is very cool because there's like multiple energy spots where these lines cross, where they run together, and then one of them is obviously here on the Tor. So what happens is they literally snake around this massive mound here, and if you look at this picture you can see how they are running through the ground, and this is obviously very experienced dowsers have put this information together, and you can see how it is held, like the masculine energy and the feminine energy. It's like almost like it makes like a chalice, right? Because the legends of the chalice being hidden here is also quite rife. So this these energy currents, these telluric lines, the dragon lines, that's what we call them, they have many different names. So they run alongside the main ley line. Okay, so they also go down into town, and if you go into the Abbey, you'll see that they actually cross there. There's a spot where the feminine and masculine line actually cross. It also, if you go down to the well that is at the bottom, at the foot here, the Chalice Well, you'll see the energies go through there as well. So these beautiful energy lines have been dowsed by some serious dowsing experts over the years, and they've all been plotted out. Okay, so there's some awesome books. I'll put some references down below as well if you're interested in this information. It's also very significant because there are springs of water. So they believe there's 7 springs that actually is underneath the Tor here. And so we have the white spring and the red spring. The Chalice Well is the red spring, and then you have the white spring right next to it, and those are there. And there's also a dark well inside the Abbey. So we have a lot of like water here with this current, this telluric current that is running. So this makes it a really powerful energetic spot to actually visit and to just come and feel the energies. Okay, so that is the history of the site, the information. So this is basically just a whole historical take on what's happened here. For myself and the work that I've been doing when I've been tuning into the energy of the land, it's very much been about working with the energy of the dragons that's connected here. So for me, when I've tuned into the energy here, we've got the 2 dragons that is literally underneath the mound in a beautiful entangled position together. Okay, so we have the energy of the masculine and the feminine. So this is also the dragon lines come together here in the space, and we have this energy that is basically at the moment, from what I've been feeling, starting to like get itself evened out, starting to really get into the space of bringing back into harmony the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So the energies here is really representative of those 2 energies. And if you just feel into it as well, I mean, being the heart center of the world, what is more beautiful than having those energies, the divine masculine, the divine feminine in balance, culminating in a sacred spot like this? Okay. So for me personally, in my channeling and when I've worked with the energies of the land, there's a lot of energies of the old priestesses that used to be here and serve the land and look after the land, initiations that were done inside of the Tor. And so some of the things that I've seen was basically how the priestesses used to look after the land from the inside out. So they would do their rituals, etc., underground, also showing how the journey of the priestess is really one that is about going to the depth of yourself. So it's about going underground, it's about the excavation of the self. And so their rituals signified and showed that depth of going into yourself again. And so I am going to be sharing a video with you that I've done that is a journey into the energies of this sacred place as well. So do have a look out on the site for this. I'll post the link below as well. And then you can take a journey with me into the actual energies of the land here, and we get to go and play with those. Okay, so thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did like it, please like, subscribe, do your thing. I'd love for you to join me on more journeys to sacred sites around the world. So thank you so much. I'm Yolandi from Divine Soul, and please leave me some comments and let me know what you thought about the video. Thank you.